talk about what's happening because, it's happening in a vacuum everywhere, right? I've spoken to judges in Massachusetts even who, submitted scathing resignation letters based on the treatment they received while on the bench there. And so it's happening all over the country. I don't think anyone is giving us the platform to discuss our experiences.
Welcome back to JFK Values. I should not have to do this, but we're going to critique people's values and how they get in the way of distributing actual value to people who need it, deserve it, are owed it both near and far. I'm your host, James Felton Keith, and this is being brought to you by the Keith Institute. This is yet another critique on inclusionism, where we like to say individuals are at their best when they identify with a community, and of course, communities are only at their best when they identify all of their individuals. So let's get right to it.
Wait, what'd you say? What did you say about the background?
I said, I don't like these white blinds, The telltale sign of a woman that lives alone is this smoke detector noise that is just going off. And it just started at like 2 minutes ago. So I had to change the whole background. I was like, what is that? I can't do that right now.
Is it a smoke detector? Or is it what's the other thing? Carbon monoxide? Or is that
now we got three now in New York, because now we also have the gas detector by law. Local law 97 finally kicked in. So now you have to have a gas detector too.
Yeah, I'm like, we got two, but I'm not sure exactly what
a lot of things to unplug.
Yeah, I'm gonna have somebody come over here and figure out which beat it is, because I just
the IT guy. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. That's great. Sorry. Let me get right back in here. Welcome back to JFK Values, everybody. I'm James Felton Keith, your host. Obviously, as always, here with Peter Williamson, with Reg Green. We've got two really special guests this week: Judge Amber Givens, Judge DaSean Jones. Both, correct me if I'm wrong, sitting judges now.
Yes.
Be careful, everybody. From the state of Texas. One in Amber, you're in Dallas. DaSean, you're in Houston.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. Actually, might be in Dallas on Tuesday. I've seen something about that. Yeah.
This by the court.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. This conference just reached out, but so yeah. I mean, we want to explore their time, on the bench, things that have gone on, what it's like to be, Black and a judge in Texas. I don't see a lot of people talking to sitting judges in general, anywhere, on the news, on podcasts, etc. One exceptional thing I might mention, though, as that we are in Black History Month, and I just got invited to this thing, and everyone was like, it's about Black excellence and this and that. I was like, let's work on like Black mediocrity. Let's get everybody involved. Like, let me get some Nepo opportunities. But that aside, these two in particular are Tuskegee grads. I'm also a Tuskegee grad.
You?
And we think we're better. We think we're better than everybody else, including Reg and Peter, which is why I wanted two other people on here so we could beat them up.
I'm available.
I'm down.
So yeah, I mean, that aside, I will also say for everyone who's watching the All-Star game next week, I am going to San Francisco for the All-Star game because Tuskegee is going to beat Morehouse in a basketball game. So it's worth everyone tuning in to that, you two included. But so let's just go through it. You all have experienced, I got a lot of background details, but we're going to try to tell a good story here. Okay. I think maybe we start with DaSean because you were just in court. With, I want to try to explain this, but maybe you'll probably explain it better than me. I'm going to give a ignorant non-lawyer's rundown of what happened. Everybody, he won the election. He was also the Democratic nominee for one of the vacant seats in the Texas Supreme Court, which is unprecedented. There was a Black man there previously, right? But he was appointed by George Bush, so he wasn't Democratic. He wasn't, voted in, etc. There were some questions about either what your election or the primary, because it was a close race, about the votes being valid. And there are headlines, many headlines. If you all just Google DaSean Jones, you see some of these headlines, and I think some analysis around that these court cases will likely be used and set a precedent to challenge all close races in the state, which, at least in my opinion, is a tactic to suppress. Did I go overboard there, or?
No, you're pretty much there. So in 2022, November 2022, I won my second election, my second term, to sit in my court. But I won, which was at the time an anomaly, less than 500 votes in Harris County, which is a pretty big county, third largest county in America. So it was considered an anomaly. And they made a big to-do about it. In my opinion, kind of vilified the whole thing and said, like, you know, there's votes were stolen and things were illegal. And they wound up suing about 21, me and about 21 other folks, mostly judges, mostly minority judges, by the way.
Yeah.
And two of us went to trial. The two that went to trial, there was Tammy Kraft. She's an African-American female judge. She went to trial, and I went to trial. And I viewed my trial as kind of like just part of the process. And what I mean by that, you know, you earlier spoke about tactics. Yeah. It just seemed like we were just going through the motions. It was only 3 people that testified. My opponent, who's obviously an interested party, my opponent's lawyer, who got to the T the amount of money that they asked for, which I did civil law for quite some time. I've never got to the penny of the amount of money I've ever asked for, which I thought was crazy. And then their so-called expert, who I felt my lawyer did a great job of showing was not an expert. They had never done this type of study before. They had no SOPs. They were never verified, never peer reviewed. But the judge was like, yep, they're an expert. And they turned the tables on me and said we'd have to redo the election this year in 2025, 3 years later, in May. But we appealed it. We appealed it because we felt like the judge just didn't follow the law. Also, the judge placed the burden on me. The other party, they're the ones claiming that something had went wrong, but they didn't show any illegal ballots. They didn't show how illegal ballots were even in our particular race. And we felt like they didn't meet the law at all. And so that's why we appealed it. I think my guys wrote a very strong appeal. The arguments online, I think they did a wonderful job. It was well attended by a lot of supporters, which I think just shows that people are tired of being abused and battered in these arenas and going kind of quiet. But yeah, then last year, just because I understood that I was an irritant to my opposition party, I ran for Texas Supreme Court just to be more irritating and keep my name out there. And the position was filled. Previously, I just ran against the incumbent, who is now, since I lost this past November 2024, he became the Chief Justice. So that's where we're at right now, just waiting on the appellate court to come back with a ruling we hope will be in our favor, because the more and more, if you just go watch the video, my lawyer killed it, and it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense.
So they might not rule in your favor.
Oh yeah, go either way. So they had an opportunity to argue. If you go watch the argument, I felt that the other side did their argument was horrible. A lot of filibustering, things that were allowed at the trial court. The guys, it's about illegal votes. So the test is, was an illegal vote? Was the illegal vote cast in your race, and did those legal votes change the outcome of the election? My lawyers argued that some things that were deemed illegal votes by law, technically by definition, were not illegal votes. 1, 2, they never showed that any of these so-called legal votes were cast in my race. They were cast in the election, which had over 100 folks on the ballot, right? But they weren't necessarily cast in my race, and they didn't bring in and that's the thing. So usually with cases, they'll bring in someone to testify. They didn't call a single witness. The judge, which I feel was, being complicit with this idea of removing me from the bench, claimed it was impractical for them to call a single witness. But in the other case that went before me, where they had a larger gap, I think it was like maybe 20,000 folks, they actually called witnesses. And every other case in Texas case law, they've always called witnesses. And they only had to call about 400 people, if that. They didn't even call like 10 people just to get just a warm and fuzzy. They did no work, and the judge kind of like pushed them over the finish line, as far as I'm concerned. And that's how we came to where we are now. It's cost a lot of money and a lot of time, but I keep a smile on my face because it's part of the game. So,
I damn near had a nervous breakdown 3 or 4 weeks ago, and a lawyer, a retired lawyer, and I know I was telling you this story offline, kind of brought me back to my senses and she's about 30 years my senior, but talked to me about working previously with John Lewis and about not letting the opposition take your joy away. And she was like, your expectations are off. They're away from our reality. Like you weren't supposed to win all these battles that you're in. So, find good times, deal with the bad times, power through. So I think it's admirable that you're like, I'm going to try to smile through this. But what you said makes me think about conversations Peter and Reg and I were having earlier about you have to be able to afford to be this public individual and fight some of these fights, whether they are in court or just, more broadly in your life. And I don't think people realize that as I have friends from Tuskegee who are like, what are you doing? You're going to run, you're going to do this. And I'm like, man, when I look at your situation, I tell them about you. And I'm like, do you know what this probably costs just to defend yourself against nonsense? And so then I think about Amber, who a few years ago, but stuff is ongoing. When I just Google you, if anyone just Google Judge Amber Givens, like it just looks like the Texas press just don't like her. I mean, when you look her, you see her here, you see the hair, but like I think she's got to be. I know like judges in New York and they don't have cool haircuts, but there are pictures of her, y'all, like on the web with like the parts and the side gone, and it's fly. And I know people probably think about like Jasmine down there in Texas and just go like, are all the women in politics like also in fashion down there? But anyway, specific to the drama, so you just recently, I'm trying to figure out how to describe.
I understand and appreciate.
You were under Texas Rangers, which if anyone's not familiar, is like the FBI in Texas investigation around judicial misconduct. It seems like they were following you, telling you, like tailing. Sorry, my Midwestern accent is just running over that word. But what's going on with the Texas Rangers? Are they in your house? Are they? Is the reason that your smoke detector is going off this morning, which is why you had to move your computers because they got it bugged? Are they confiscating devices? Like,
well, first let's talk about how I need to just buy stock in every newspaper in Texas, okay? Because I sell newspapers, all right? I definitely need some stock because I didn't make any money from all of this, all the lies. But just to kind of focus it, so in August of 2021, we were all virtual. The Texas Supreme Court required that we were virtual because of the pandemic. And, the allegation, and I guess I'm going to start it going from the email. So there are emails that I received from the attorneys that accuse me of so-called committing a crime. And their emails specifically say that they want to set me up to get investigated or charged or at least investigated for a crime in the hopes of ruining my election prospects, right? We'll talk later maybe about how I got the emails legally, of course. But it was all a setup, right? I was in my, it was election time and I had just created an anti-discrimination policy behind the fact that attorneys were on Facebook calling Black people animals and subhuman. And I thought, if you can't afford to pay for an attorney, you don't get to pick the attorney. And these were attorneys that we were literally using county dollars to pay to represent indigent people. And I thought that doesn't jive somehow. And so in creating the policy, I really put myself in a hornet's nest. And as a result, there was this whole idea of a crime being committed. And I was under investigation for several years. In September of 2023, the Republican DA that they picked to investigate me finally came out and said, there was no criminal wrongdoing. However, right? Because we couldn't just do our job, which is decide was a crime committed. But we have to go beyond that to try to make Judge Givens look bad. However, Judge Givens was unprofessional because she refused to turn over her electronic device, my phone, and she refused to interview with the Texas Rangers. Well, we all have these rights. They're constitutional rights, and they are not tied to your citizenship in the United States. And so I just so happen to exercise those rights, right to privacy, right? And the right to remain silent, which is something, those are rights that I make sure are protected of others every day.
Yeah.
And so the idea that they thought that I would waive those rights just because I'm an elected official, I also happen to be a resident of Dallas County and, by the way, an American citizen. And so, it's just been the best roller coaster ride for the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I'm sure other people feel different about this, but 2021 seems like it was yesterday, but that is 4 years. We're in 2025. Mm-hmm. It's not like Happy New Year, happy belated. Like we're deep in, we're moving into the middle of February. But so, I mean, both of your stories, again, haven't heard about them earlier. And, I've talked to some other Black judges in other states, and basically the through line that I hear is that there are more barriers put up, more process, more critique that wouldn't be necessary anywhere else for you all. Are you all in touch with other Black judges in the state, in the counties that you represent? Do we see this in other places? Or like, what is it like being Black in Texas? Like, I've only been to Texas twice.
I mean, so I will say this. I feel extremely blessed to have a classmate like DaSean just down the road, because when I tell you the phone conversations that we have, it's needed. Like, we all need to be able to have somebody who not only appreciates but understands, because there's something different to say, can you believe XYZ happened? Mm-hmm. Versus someone who is also in the fire, saying, wow, this is something that we need to give a voice to. And so we're extremely appreciative, speaking on behalf of DaSean too, to have this opportunity to just talk about what's happening, because, it's happening in a vacuum everywhere, right? I've spoken to judges in Massachusetts even who, submitted scathing resignation letters based on the treatment they received while on the bench there. And so it's happening all over the country. I don't think anyone is giving us the platform to discuss our experiences.
Reg, you were a prosecutor. Am I saying that right? Is that the right word? Did you ever try to manipulate or intimidate judges? I'm just saying, is that the wrong thing?
I'm struggling right now not to call either of these people DaSean or Amber, because in my mind, it's your honor.
Right.
That's how you're coded.
Engineer. Right. Let me.
In New York, that's
Judge
how you code it.
Judge
I don't know about Texas. I don't know. But in New York, there's a great level of deference. And, that's how people should come in. So when I read those headlines and saw the stories, I said, man, like it's so counter to how judges, at least as a prosecutor, how judges are to be treated and how they're looked upon. There's often and should be a deference, not only because they can change the trajectory of your case, as I think Sean's saying very clearly, like, depends on who your judge is. And so, the impact a judge can make on your case by following the law or not, or having a different interpretation of the law, leads to deference. And so to hear these kind of investigations, et cetera, it's really surprising. I mean, it's just shocking.
Can I just say, and Peter, I want to let you get in here, but Judge Givens, I didn't realize that you all from the bench are also writing policy. So this is what policy specific to how the courts operate? Is it just your court? Does it go to like a caucus of courts across the state? Like,
so the way it works, it depends on the county, but in Dallas County, as a judge, you can create a policy that would impact all, for me, 17 felony courts, right? But it has to be passed by a majority. It took me almost a year to get that policy passed. Like I said, it's the first of its kind in the country. I thought New York would have something, California would have something, but neither state addressed the issue of indigent individuals having attorneys that essentially won't discriminate against them. That's what it is. And it's not just based on race. It's based on gender identification, ability, age.
All of it. Yeah.
All of it, right? Because literally those people's lives, their liberties in the hands of their defense attorney. And so they need to be able to trust them.
Where's my DEI hat? I got this new hat. And that's a DEI issue. But wait, so you all are in two different types of courts. Can you?
Same.
Okay, same court. But
at me.
But DaSean, my bad, Judge Jones, you were a military judge before this. Did y'all just make people like peel potatoes when they were being bad, or like
Crazy.
what did that work like? Was
No,
like
so I became a military judge in 2022.
They're old, by the way,
Yeah.
everybody. They're older than me. Both of them were in school.
Yeah.
We overlap, but I was on the end of the lap. Go ahead. Yeah.
But no, I think honestly, the military system, from what I've seen, is, in my opinion, a lot more fair. I think one of the reasons that it's much more fair is because, we all wear the green suit, so to speak. I'm an Army guy, and we all look at each other as kind of brothers and sisters of arms. So I think just with that commonality, we tend to treat each other a lot better, if that makes sense. It's a very rigid system. We kind of champion ourselves on not having a bunch of cases where we're putting the wrong person in prison or jail, because we make sure we do it right the first time instead of having to do it twice, like a lot of times you see with the civilian system. And again, you got folks in the military system, the prosecutors, they're going to have worked on the defense side, defense worked on the prosecution side. It's a smaller, group of folks. And then even when we go through the cases, it's very systematic. Military is federal, right? So it's more in line with the federal, for people who are familiar with the federal system, more in line with the federal system. I'm not going to say slow, but it's more paced, and it's a lot more focused on just making sure that justice is done, as opposed to like the civilian system. When I first started getting into the civilian system, it's a lot of, who do you know? Like, I went to school with so-and-so. I work with such and such. Oh, I'm a former prosecutor. I come from this office, and such is my office mate. Let me go talk to him. I probably get a good deal, right? On the military side, you better know the law. You better be prepared to brief, and it's going to be, straight up law. It's not going to be the wild, wild west a lot of times you get with the civilian system.
Wait. Okay. Right. Well, because you
tell me to come on here.
I love it.
I'm learning, right? I think as everyone. Again, I think one thing is people are just not familiar with the judicial, system. Most of us don't interact with it unless we have some sort of criminal or civil case. I just had jury duty. They made us wait the whole day, but then they let us off. We didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I probably won't hear from them again until 4 years. And I only didn't try to make up an excuse because Reg talked to me about duty, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go down.
Good job, Reg.
So you didn't do nothing. In fact, you showed up for jury duty. That's
your
a requirement.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We need folks.
Exactly.
They sent me. It's $40, but
if you don't show up to serve, someone else does, and that changes the pool.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. I was prepared. Now, I mean,
I think that kind of taps into what we're discussing too. Changing the pool. I think some of these attacks have been brought on myself and Judge Givens. It's an effort to change that pool, in effect, to make sure that justice looks one way instead of a different way. Because if you don't have certain people in certain positions, you get different outcomes. The same way with the jury duty. It's inversely, like if you change the judges, you'll get a different outcome a lot of times, because there are different. Although we're supposed to look at the facts and the law through the judicial lens, what have you. Based upon your perspective, your experiences, how you grew up, where you grew up, your socioeconomics, it's going to cast certain inferences with respect to your judicial discretion. And that's when a lot of times you might get someone that's more so like, hey, they smoke marijuana. Let me not put them in prison. Let me, either give them a program or not. That's not a place where we put people for prison. But then some people, if you smoke marijuana, they want you to go to, they want the death penalty. And it just depends on how you're raised. I mean, we've seen it. But the gentleman at the bottom, the former prosecutor, have you ever heard of Judge Bruce Wright? He's from New York.
I do not.
Okay. Famous judge. I want to say he was a Vietnam vet. He was highly persecuted in New York. They call him Turn 'em Loose Bruce. African American man. Great book he has. I think it's called Black Robe, White Justice. Everything he says in that book is the same things that you see now in 2025 going on with judges. Same, nothing's really changed. So particularly, I learned about him when I first came onto the bench, and his story is super impactful, and it's encouraging because he went through a lot right there in New York. So,
I see it.
Bruce. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Lose Bruce. That's a good. What year was that? That sounds very civil rights.
He's from like the 60s, 70s era, I believe. Yeah, Bruce Wright. Great book.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was just going to throw in. So even as we look at a lot of these controversial cases, and when they're talking about jury selection and who the judge struck, or who the judge allowed to stay on, and sometimes when you hear them interviewed at the end, you're like, oh my gosh, they said what on the record, and the judge allowed them to stay. Sounds like they had a vendetta, so that's key too, because judges are making those decisions, and I think it's for the public, as we stated, they're not really, maybe they vote for judges, maybe they don't, depending on what election cycle you're on. But do they really know the impact we have on everyone's everyday lives, even if you're never charged with the crime or even, accused of something, right? So, I mean, jury selection is just one of those things. I mean, we have Batson, because of the fact that jurors at one point in time were being struck for only race. There was no other reason that they could determine that the people had been struck and not eligible to sit on a jury panel, but for the color of their skin. And so these are important things, reasons why you want a diverse bench, why you want a judge who sits in the middle and can hear from everyone. Just crucial to the system operating the way it should for all of us.
Yeah, I watched, it was my first time doing this. I watched Reg prosecute remember, Reg, do I need to call you something? I need to give you a prefix for your name, like Governor.
Reg.
Okay. All right. So, no, I watched him pick a jury, and it was fascinating for a hate crime here in Manhattan. And anyway, the whole thing was just fascinating, and looking at how he and the defense attorney, am I saying that the right way, kind of went back and forth around who was on and off the jury and some of the picks that they were making. I was a little proud too, because the defense attorney was a little hood, but he didn't look like us. And I was like, oh my God, I realized what everyone's calling these Obama elites. I was like, Reg out here using long words and 5 syllables and everything. I was like, they're going to come kill us. I'm going to hide up here in Manhattan, which is why I never make it down to Texas. All right, let me bring back. So before I got some other questions just about processing things we can do better. But I don't know, Peter, did you?
We know this, James. But I was just thinking how much success the two judges had in sort of getting the story out to the public when they were running, about talking about the importance of having a diverse bench, the values that are represented by having a diverse bench, as opposed to a bench that only looks like one kind of person. Is this a story that people are sort of available to hear? Is it an uphill battle? What's the experience been like?
Well, once upon a time, we had this deal where they actually graded the bench in every state, right? It was a report card, and it compared the diversity of the bench to the diversity of the community. And I'll tell you, most states failed. I think Texas got a D at the time. They haven't completed the study, and I don't think they touched it in years. But at the time, most states were flunking because the people in the community don't look like the people on the bench. And the article just discussed the importance, why that is, why is that an issue that needs to be tackled? And for all the reasons we've already stated, it's clear. And I mean, especially it's funny because in Houston and in Dallas, we actually have very high numbers. At one point in time, Dallas had the highest number of judges that were of African descent. So, I would tell you a story. When we went to a conference,
we're here for
in Austin, we were all walking in as a group of Dallas judges. We were proud. This is our first year on the bench. We're going to learn. We're going to get some CLEs, some CJEs. Right. And there were these 2 Caucasian older judges sitting at the very entrance, and they both had on visible hearing aids, right? So they were talking really loud. And they're like, oh my gosh, look at them. They're going to take all the benches.
That just sounds funny in a few different ways. We couldn't keep going. Yeah.
I was like, I'm all like, oh, we're all judges here together. This is so exciting. I'm going to learn so much. And then to be greeted in that way, that our mere presence, all we did was walk in to the front, by the way. And we irked their spirit. And so, that's why those studies need to be done on a regular basis. That's why we have to have these conversations on a regular basis, because it's not, you know, those judges heard many cases of many people, and you would wonder, how did they rule? You know, was there a personal bias of any sort? So
with regards to how you all get on the bench, like I know here in New York, the county party, like Manhattan is New York County, you know, Brooklyn is Kings County, like they're, you know, all the different counties, they have party chairs, and there's district leaders, there's, you know, even a more micro type of leader. I think in other states they may call them precincts, etc. And then we nominate county party by county party the judges that'll be on the ballot in that area. Is that similar in Texas, or you all just run outright, or is it? Yeah, can you explain more about that process? How you get on the ballot?
So in Texas, and jump in whenever you're ready, Judge Givens. Texas it's not, they don't just select someone. We're basically, it's more of a popular vote, right?
Okay.
So you have to get out there, kind of back to the issue of getting the word out. It all boils down to dollars and finance. So there's a question earlier about, hey, as far as getting the word out about what's going on with our stories, it takes a lot of money, and there was a lot of money to create the counter narratives to vilify us. Like my treasurer, who's also CPA, he did the research. When I ran 2022, it's like they put up like $2 million against little old me, you know. And I'm sitting there with a $30,000 budget. I won still, so the $2 million was wasted, by the way. And for all the donors that are watching and donate to that, congratulations, you lost. But anywho, even with running, you have to be able to put up money to, you know, do social media, put your, you know, ads out, yard signs, things of that nature. That's how we do it here. And so hopefully, like with me, everyone's different. My nucleus, so to speak, was I'm a military veteran, so I tapped into my military groups. Remember Captain Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, so I tapped into that. Obviously went to Tuskegee, tapped into that. So I tapped into like my surroundings, and then also just by and through friends, and made sure that I had a nice, you know, I'll call it for Houston, global aspect of the Democratic Party that's willing to vote for me, and then kept tapping into these communities, kept visiting, and you're out probably the same way like just giving you out day in and day out. I mean, you're doing full days, coming back home like 10, 11 o'clock, you're hitting this meeting, that meeting, and you really got to drive around the city and put your face out there. And then we have our primary, and, you know, so long, if you don't have a opponent in primary, you win your primary. So you win like your party primary, and then we go into the general election, which is in November. That's it in a nutshell. I'm sure there's some other aspects that can be added, but in a nutshell, that's how it works.
But down there, the general election is pretty hotly contested, right? Because I mean, it's just
so for your primary, what I've seen, in my opinion, is your primary, you're just dealing with your party, and if you have a good name within your party, you'll win your primary. No, you know, no big deal. The general, you're dealing with your party, the opposing party, and then people that don't care about any party, like, and those folks, those outliers. To me, that's what really will sway the vote, because they're, you know, folks that are in either party, they're a little bit more focused on and they're more educated on what's going on.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the folks that are like the outliers, which is fine, you know, they don't particularly, they don't go to a single party meeting all year. They're kind of going off the news and what they're seeing from the media. And that's how the media is being used pretty much as a machine to kind of hurt certain candidates, if you will. And a lot of times when you trace the money back to these neutral media outlets, you'll see it came from one party or the other. Here in Texas, predominantly from, you know, the more financially stable party here, which is the Republican Party. And so that's how that works.
Yeah, like here in Manhattan, like if you win the primary, it's very blue. So you know you want, like, all we really have is the primary, because you'll win the general. But I can only imagine.
And the primary is not even the primary, because as you say, it's the county party that's picking the candidates who are going to show up as the D next to their name on the ballot. So that's
the judges always win. Right.
Yeah. And they're mostly unopposed in New York.
Okay. Yeah, we got opposition.
But we
got democracy here in Texas. I don't know what y'all do in New York. We got democracy here. You know, the people matter.
There's a wait list. Yeah.
In Dallas is kind of similar to New York, just in that we haven't had any real Republican opposition since 2006 when the county turned blue. And so in Dallas, they always say, once you get out of your Democratic primary, you're good. So in my last election, they actually put up 2 former judges against me in my primary and had me under investigation, all the things. So all the tactics, we were talking about real quick how I got the emails. So as an elected official, another thing when we talk about money, we can't merely go out and file a defamation lawsuit, right? We have to prove actual malice. Right. And so it can't just be you said this about me and it's not true. We have to prove that you did it with a malicious heart. And so I had to do a 202, which is like a discovery tool. And that discovery tool got me access to the attorneys that were setting me up, their emails, their text messages, and I got a 9-hour deposition. Right. And so out of the emails, they were talking about their strategy. They put up all kinds of money with the media. I mean, I was on the news morning, afternoon, evening. I was on, I won't even give the newspaper any props to list their name, but I was, headline almost every day. And it really, when you look at people who are aligned with their interest, and some of them, I'm just going to be honest, some of them are Democrats too, or the D is next to their name.
Yeah.
But they were actually committed crimes. There's a judge in Dallas, since we're shooting it straight, she got charged with a DWI. She pled to a DWI. She was on probation for a DWI.
Yeah.
And she was in the news twice. Once when she got arrested and once when she pled, right? So when you look at it, if it's truly you're trying to pick out us bad judges, you got to look at trace the money. Where's the money, right? So back to election stuff. Sorry.
I see Reg's face. I don't know what do you.
You would never, Reg, if you saw the emails, and I was on Roland Martin about this issue in 2022. That's how long I've been dealing with this issue. Roland Martin put the emails up on the board, and he was just like flabbergasted that attorneys put this stuff in writing, right? And so they will, to DaSean's point, they will put up money. I'm sure it was millions of dollars they put up against me with their 2 candidates. So with that, thank God, the way my God works is that I didn't even have a runoff because I got over 53% of the vote with 2 former judges running against me in my primary. Right. So that's what happens. God allows us to go through these battles. But I will tell you, look at DaSean, look at me. We don't look like the fire has ever touched us. We've been in it, right? But we look good. And that's part of it too. They want you to quit. We have not quit, right? Because it's not about positioning for us. Positioning is very personal, right? It's all about you being in the black robe and having a title, right? People that undergo things like DaSean and I, you got to know that we're there for the people, because people, if it's all about positioning, would walk away from these jobs because we're spending more than we make, really, defending ourselves.
Yeah, they don't pay for everyone. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
No, I was just gonna say on that, like, if you're given an opportunity to address, an audience that's not just, specific to your elections, what would you want to say to folks about the importance of judicial positions that folks don't understand necessarily about who fills these roles? Can you speak to the sort of the civic nature of your position, what it means, and also what kind of legacy that you hope to leave behind afterwards?
So for me, if I had that opportunity, I think one of the things is that it kind of ties into what Judge Gibbons is saying, is like, you have to do it for the right reason. I've met a lot of folks, once they become elected, their egos get out of control. They're like, everyone refer to me as judge, and even in this conversation we've had, I'm very familiar with folks, on this channel. So, my name is DaSean. That's what my mother called me. So when someone calls me DaSean, I don't freak out. But I know people, if you call them by their first name, they are going to read you every riot act that they can find, right? And this is the first time they've ever been important in life. It's the first time they've ever made real money in life. It's the first time they've had that type of power. And those people are dangerous because they tend to abuse power. They tend to abuse the money. They can be bought. And I think those are the types of people you don't want to be judges. You want people that are going to be fair to everyone, right? Like when you come into my court, imagine we're going to Judge Givens' court. It doesn't matter what side you're on. You're there to bring some facts and some law, and that's it. You know, we don't care about your Armani suit or who you go to church with on Sunday. We in a good way or a bad way. We just want to be fair. And when you see folks that are being attacked, I think it's important to understand why they're being attacked. There's this saying that, I think it was, who was it? Malcolm X, like, the media will have the people truly the heroes look like, like we're just the villains, right? And there's a reason for that. There's a reason they're focused on that, because obviously they're not satisfied with the outcome or our independence. There's a lot of folks, they will be shaken by any type of media cry to start, going a different way with their judgment, because someone said something and they don't have the backbone to just stand firm and do what's right. And I think that's the real issue here when it comes to us, is we like judicial independence. We're supposed to have judicial independence. Some folks, you mentioned their name one time, they'll change everything they're going to do. You go to their website, they've changed the policies because they're afraid of what will happen to me, right? And you need strong people to sit in these positions, because the things we do, particularly on the criminal side, we affect lives. Like on Monday, we can go to work and we can send someone to prison for 25 years. That's super impactful, right? We really affect lives, and you can't have cowards in these jobs. And that's the thing. You cannot have cowards in these jobs. You have to people that are going to stand on principle, and they're not going to be swayed by the media and swayed by the thoughts and criticism of others, because that's not our job. That's not what we're supposed to do. So that would be my thing. Sure, Judge Givens has
no. So I want to talk about the why again too, and I want people to know, like, read beyond the headlines. It would be my other request, right? People sell newspapers based on headlines. The headline may have nothing to do with the substance of the article, but they've got you now believing that this particular judge or this particular elected official has done something wrong because that's what the headline said, right? And question, if you see a particular elected official in the news all the time, I need people to put their thinking caps on, right? And as we're in Black History Month and we now celebrate MLK, back in the day, MLK was not celebrated. Right. He was not loved by all Black people or all white people or all people of every color, right? And now it's in to celebrate him, right? But he was always in the newspaper. What did they do to him first? You start arresting him. You try to criminalize him so that you take away the veracity behind the movement, right? You take away every purpose of the movement and you focus on his criminality. Yeah. Right? Because why would you follow a criminal? Why would you trust a criminal? Right? So then modern day 2025, I need y'all to ask the same questions. Why are they focused on this one elected official? Why is this one elected official having to defend their race? Right? Yeah. Asking why is so key, because they're used to robots opening Instagram, seeing a quick headline and moving on and adopting that feeling about that person. And then beyond that, I want you all to look at these commissions, right? In Texas, we have a judicial commission, and most of the members are picked by our governor, right? I want you all to look, how do they reprimand judges? Who are the judges that they're reprimanding? Who are the judges that are being reported all the time? I want us to dig deep, because these are all the things that, we must be concerned with as sitting judges. It's not just our day-to-day going to work and deciding correctly, And I will say this, in 10 years, I've never been overturned. Yeah. Right. The individual that I ran against, and who ran against me because he liked getting beat, so he did it a second time. He was the second most overturned judge in Dallas County, right? But you never saw him in the newspaper.
Can you expand on that? Just what it means to be overturned for folks who may not realize?
It means that you're not getting it right the first time. It means that
making bad decisions.
Right. You're making bad decisions. There's somebody's liberty and someone's safety at stake here, right? And since we all like to talk about taxes, we're all taxpayers, right? Well, not only are they putting in jeopardy your liberty and your safety, they're also costing you more money because you have to retry that case. Yeah. Right. So that's important. That's newsworthy, huh? Never heard about it in the news. Never heard about it. in the news, not a headline. Okay. So, I need people to actually research, and not just what you see online. Because I used to love being Googled, because the questions I would see about myself, how old is Judge Givens? I'm like, come on, keep asking. Right? Is she single? Like, those are great questions. But now I feel like when people like, I'm gonna Google you. Well, what I can tell you everything. What do you need to know?
What do you need to know? Right.
What is it? Right. But seriously, because like to DaSean's point, you have to laugh about this, right? Yes. You must, because they won't crush our spirits, right? So we have to dig, and it can't just be what you see online.
Yeah, and I think an interesting point too is like statistically in Texas, I think there's about, well, I looked online, it's like about 3,000 judges in Texas, and we started whittle down the numbers on who gets targeted.
Yeah.
Based, and then look at the percentage of what judges they are. It really doesn't even make sense. Like, I think in Texas we make up maybe about 2% of judges, and then even with the election lawsuit, the only two that went to trial were the two African American judges. But there's all these other. It's like, how is this even possible? Like, when you look at all statistically, it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
But then that's sorry, it's kind of sound like the race card, but let's talk to statistics and numbers. It doesn't make sense to anyone that's like an engineer or anything like that. When you look at these numbers, we don't have, although okay, so for instance, in Houston, I'm in the newspaper. In Dallas, Judge Givens is in the newspaper. Look at all the other judges there are. How is it statistically possible that she's making the news more than these other judges? That doesn't even make sense. So it's a targeting aspect there too that I think is kind of curious, that I wish someone would kind of dig into, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So
in our very last show, we were going back and forth, and Peter really brought up, we were talking about sort of the failures from a messaging standpoint, the Democratic Party. And I mean, you all, again, unlike judges in every other state, are proper politicians. You're running outright on the popular vote, which, again, I wasn't aware that was happening, how it's happening versus how we do things up here in New York State and so many other states. But yeah, it just seems to me like there's a void in the market of communications to better tell these stories so people understand who judges are and what they do, number one. But yeah, I mean, is there anything you all want to add? Because when I Google you all, right, all I see are like the crazy headlines. It's like, is crazy. She has, someone headline is like 100. I'm like, is that a lot? Is it a little? I don't know what that means.
James, I love that you brought that up, right? So, a lot of the question also has been in these certain areas, are judges working?
Yeah, is she working?
I was like, something we don't work.
There was never any oversight before.
Did they go to law school?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know, we need to check. We need a copy of that.
Did she admit it? Did she admit it? I don't know.
But
we'd like to see your long form birth certificate, please.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, many times I definitely have felt like I needed to carry it around in my pocket with me. But
yeah, but yeah, the headlines made me initially, because right, I was talking to DaSean. He was like, "Oh, you gotta hear Amber's story, blah blah blah." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a deep dive." But yeah, those initial headlines, for someone who is ignorant about the process, about what judges do, when I saw, and for anyone, we're gonna post the headlines in the post when the video comes out. But yeah, if you just Google Judge Amber Givens, I think like the second or third thing you'll see is like, she created 100 cases in a split second or something like that. And I was like, is that a good thing, a bad thing? Because I think for the rest of us, like, I think The Good Wife was one of the greatest shows. That's someone who knows writers here in New York. I think it's very hard to produce as much content as they did over time. And I remember, again, The Good Wife, for anyone who didn't watch it, these portions where, and I think it was set in Chicago, even though they filmed it in New York or vice versa, I can't remember right now. But they would go with all these cases and take these people out of, I guess, something similar to central booking. Again, this is just something I am very ignorant about. And so I think most people are going to be right where I am with, like, what does this stuff mean? Is this the Scorpion lady?
I am a Scorpio, by the way.
Exactly. It's gonna be. And then people who aren't us, when they see the pictures, like, is she 12? Y'all got to see the haircuts and everything. It's dope to me. But other people might go, when I think of a judge, I think about those British men who wear the curly wigs, and like her wig is not white and curly. And then you see, Judge Jones is like, is he scary, etc. So I mean, I'm with you. I just think that we need to do a better job of storytelling in general. And what I was getting at by the fact that you all are elected in a different fashion than the folks are in New York, they still make the ballot, but the 4 or 5 judges that are on the back of the ballot in New York, when you're voting for federal, state, municipal office, are kind of baked in. There's the exact amount of seats available as the ones that they're being presented for, and the party has vetted them. So our judges will usually go around to Democratic clubs that are led by county sub-leaders called district leaders who conduct the clubs. And they do raise money for that. Either they have it, law firms pour into it, etc. And we send them forward. And we have whole separate meetings with just the judges and the sitting members of the party. And of course, the party and the people in those meetings are less than the total number of seats that are available in the county committee, which selects folks for that county. But my point is, because you all just go at it like someone running for U.S. Congress or governor, I think that makes it that much more necessary that there is a dedicated communications arm. And I mean, who better to start the storytelling than you all? But I think that these are stories and this is content that people would like to hear about. And I think it's necessary. Oh yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I think just sort of jumping off a thought that I just had to maybe close out with is that talking about early on about judicial independence, judicial discretion. Do either you or both of you have a story where it comes to mind of a case where you felt as an individual you handled it differently, that might sort of exemplify to people the importance of who's on the bench and that it does matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll say 2018, there were, in Dallas, you have 17 felony courts. And for capital murders and murders, you have special assignments, right? So that way there's an equal distribution of the murder cases. So one court doesn't have all the capital murders, right? Oh. And so we kept these binders for decades. And the binders had the courts listed from criminal district 1 all the way to our highest court or highest court number. And so whenever a person was murdered, right, and an individual was arrested, you knew exactly where that case was going to land, right? So fast forward to 2018, there was a case. It involved 2 police, and it was supposed to come to my court. Well, they ended up having to do a whole investigation because there was some funny business happening, and the case didn't come to my court, right? And ultimately, an official said in writing, well, to friends, and then there was writing that I was too independent, that I could not be manipulated, and they didn't want the case to come to my court, right? Well, I did my own little research and I said, wow, so you mean that police and, prosecuting offices are kind of involving themselves in where cases land? And I thought that's a complete violation of an individual charged who has a fair court to be heard in. Yeah. And so I proposed a new policy where, anti-forum shopping. Anytime, I don't care what the offense is, what you're accused of, you are entitled to have a fair judiciary, right? To have an impartial judge, and no one from the outside should be holding cases to skip courts because they don't want a specific court to get a case. And so it caused me a lot of heat. And I think that a lot of people would not have stood up and taken the heat for that.
Did that make the news?
It did. It made the news, but I was called a liar. Like I don't have anything better to do with my time than make up stories about things happening. And behind closed doors, what was so disheartening for me, though, was, this is not the same bench, right? And when I say that, all the people that were on the bench at the time are not there. But there was a specific judge who said to me, after I had been in the news for 2 weeks being called a liar, we all know it's been happening, the forum shopping, and we just need to stop it. And I thought, So you mean to tell me you didn't have the strength or courage in the last 2 weeks to say that you've been on the bench for decades and you know what's been happening? So for me, and that's not even about color, right? That's not even about race. That's just about courage. That's just about a moral compass. And so for me, you know, my oldest brother was incarcerated. And so twice. And so I'm in this position as a family member that's been impacted by the system, as a former prosecutor, a defense attorney as well. And so I think when it comes to independence of the judiciary, you have to focus on finding people who are independent and who are not concerned with the clamor and the criticism that will come when you're standing up and doing the right thing. And it can't just be people who are more concerned about reelection. Right. You know, are they doing what's right behind closed doors when they get no credit? And I'll tell you, my PR person, when all this hit me, she was like, you got to start bragging about the stuff that you do that's good, because then when they hit you with the bad news, you got the good news that was already out there. But then, you know, people like me, I'm like, well, I didn't do it for, you know, the press. So, right. So to your point, yes, I think that in that instance, not everybody would have stood up, right? Regardless of what they look like and where they come from. It really is about having someone in these roles that cares more about the people than about the position.
Yeah, and thank you, you know, Peter, for that. I guess where my mind was even going is I think some of the judges up here in New York are a bit reluctant to tell their story or talk about this at all because of the nature of how they go into office. But yeah, I think you all have more opportunity to better tell these stories. And the PR person is right, because we are, you know, fighting messaging. And because of how you all are elected, I think it is ethically within your, you know, is ethically viable for you all to say, I have to tell more of these stories. Right. One question that I wanted to ask was, well, since we started, but I wanted to save it till close to, and I guess we're kind of close, is how do you all feel? Where do you all sit? What do you all think in general? It's like there's a lot of complexity on judges being elected versus appointed. Like, is the electoral process too much when you also have like this job to do? Is it too short? Are the terms long enough? Like, thoughts on that in general? I know we do it different in every state, but
for me, you know, it's everyone has their own opinion, perspective. Let's start there, right? But now let's get into mine. I believe in the people, and I believe the people have a right to choose. You know, for those that don't know my background, when I left Tuskegee, I went straight into the military. Went to Iraq twice, so I'm very big on the Constitution, the people, who we serve. That's part of, you know, who I am. It's part of my fabric. So for me, because I don't know all the interplay of it, when I hear that it's appointed by a person, in my mind, I'm thinking this czar, this, you know, this despot that's like, hey, you're going to be the judge because I know you're going to rule the way I want you to do it. And you and then it's like, did you make it to the Tea Party? Did you go to the same school? And you have all this nepotism, cronyism that can get built into it. I think the people, you know, let's go Boston Tea Party, right? They have they get a chance to decide who they want to be their elected officials and leaders. That's how I prefer it. Now, maybe if I have more conversations with folks from other states and they can explain to me why they believe that this individual or this group of people who probably would never go to your church, eat lunch, or have dinner with you are going to select all your leaders, how that's appropriate, maybe I'll understand. But until I have that conversation, to me, I prefer for the people to make that decision, because we're making decisions every day for those same people who are going to come in our courts. Their families are going to come in our courts. We have to go through their churches. We have to go have dinner with them. We have to have lunch with them, or they're not going to elect us, because they don't really get to know us. And even then, it's so many folks that are voting, they don't really get to know you. But even more so, if you're in this closed room and you're like, yeah, you're going to be the judge, but you didn't go to my school, or, you know, you're not part of this club. That's what I think is happening. I'm probably wrong. I'm being facetious. I'm probably right. But that's just how I feel about it. So that's my opinion.
Judge Givens. I mean, yeah, I hear you.
Well, I think what we've left off, not only because in these election seasons, believe me, we're still in trial. So we're working full days. Then we're leaving the courthouse and we're going to all these different things, events. You're meeting with people. you know, a lot of great people, some people that don't have such great intentions. And all while you're doing that, right? You still also have to get a certain number of signatures on a petition to get on the ballot. So it's not like you just are out here like, oh, I'm going to be a judge. No, you have to get signatures of so many. And I've never paid, and it escapes
Never paid either.
Yeah, you need so many people in Dallas County that are registered voters to sign a petition to get you on the ballot, right? And I normally triple mine, because I'm going to tell you, there's even less in that, because you'll go to the party and they can reject you. They can get you kicked off the ballot even. And so I always double, triple mine. And I never pay, because I really do want it to be the people that are selecting me, right? They've signed the petition, and then they vote me in through the primary. And so we have a lot of work here to do, and still be, you know, in the midst of chaos with any attacks. So add the attacks onto the work, and making sure that you're making the correct decision, and making sure that you're campaigning, you know. So it's a lot of work. And I want to applaud DaSean, my friend. I applaud DaSean for having the strength and courage to show up every day, you know, and I have to give myself a pat on the back too, because a lot of people would crumble, you know, because it's not as simple as just getting your name on the ballot, right? And
I think I would.
And what about our party? I'm just going to be straight. What about our party defending us?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. We didn't even get to get. I mean, we can get into it. I'm available to run over a bit if you all are. About, again, we talk about the running, and but we didn't get into how the Democratic Party treats you all, because I'm assuming, but again, it's just assumption. Correct me if I'm wrong. That the majority of the party down there is, you know, not Black.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So. I mean, but y'all are in two of the biggest, blackest cities. Like our frat brothers, is he still the mayor in Dallas? I know he switched parties.
Yeah, I think he's still the mayor.
Yeah, but you know, with the mayor, he's not really. I mean, it's. I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to be tied to a party. But for judges, we do have to. You know, we have to decide what party we're going to be affiliated with, and. I would question, you know, DaSean, have you gotten the support from the party? You're the party's candidate.
So one correction. So the first time I ran, I did not, you know, I was naive, deer in the headlights, whatever. And I just got my signatures. The second time, because of my dealings with the party, I made sure to go ahead and pay, because I thought I might get, thought it might be some funny business is the term I'll use. So that goes towards the support. I don't feel, I've gotten the necessary support from the party. Most things I do on my own, probably just like Judge Givens. You know, we set up our own interviews, we do our own PR, we pay our own money, we drive our own cars. And now when I say the party, I'm not talking about the people, like I'm talking about the structure, the headquarters, the chair and his minions, what have you. In fact, I'm not sure if I shared it with you all, but I wrote a letter, which I thought it was a graceful letter, to the party chair, explaining why I didn't want my name and likeness used by the party here, because I felt like they weren't supporting me. And this is because they're doing their fundraising efforts, and we're going to support Judge Jones, blah, this, blah, that. And it sounds good to the public, but I felt like I wasn't going to see any of that money at the end of the day. And you're not about to, you know, how do I say this? I'm trying to think of a refined way of saying
mascot. I'm not your fundraising mascot.
Fundraising mascot. I was going to use another term, but probably not appropriate. But you're not going to do that and then get that money off of my back and then not share or help me in any way, shape, or form, which you haven't done in years. And so I sent that to the party chair. I'm expecting at the end of the letter, it's like, hey, we can sit down and talk about this. Maybe you can show me an audit or what the plan would be to use these funds. Otherwise, I don't trust it. And rather than getting that, I got attacked by one of his dogs. This, party person, starts saying all of a sudden, after almost a decade, I'm no longer a viable candidate. I think I'm a Jedi Knight. I'm not sure what that meant. I thought it was cool because I'm a fan of, you know, the Jedi. That would take too long to discuss, but I am a fan. You know, go Star Wars. But so I really did like that actually. So and it and then something about me not showing up in the meeting they're talking about. When I didn't show up, I was on military duty. Anyone that knows, as a reservist, you have to go to duty. If I don't go to duty, I get in a lot of trouble, and I couldn't go to the duty. And the person who had actually told that was part of the party try to make it a big deal at the meeting, you know, trying to, you know, vilify me. And they knew I couldn't be there because of military duty. They're like, oh, why is he not here? He thinks it's not important, this, that, and the third. I'm on federal orders in DC, you know, like I can't be there. Like, it's just not happening. But luckily I had some people there to defend me and call it out. And so long story short, here in Harris County, no, I the balance of the power structure within the party, I don't trust. I'm just going to be honest. They know that. Anytime you see me in pictures, I'm all by myself. I'm cool with that. We've been doing fine. And so I'm not sure how it is in Dallas, but I don't feel like monetarily, spiritually, mentally, outside of a pat on the back, which doesn't do much, that I've been supported by the party here. But I do believe that Democrats in Harris County do support me wholly. Like, so even when I ran statewide, I lost statewide, but I won Harris County, which I think it speaks volumes, because there are people that relied on the party for this singular county. We have 254 counties in Texas.
Yeah.
And the people that relied on the party in this singular county, they lost this county. I won the county when I ran statewide. So that just says, you know, didn't need a party, and I still won this county. And people that actually relied on them, they lost. I think that's a huge deal, and people really need to dissect that and think about where we're going to go forward here in Harris County as we move forward. So
yeah, I think people don't realize that in politics, you got to put in your own work. No old party official can, even if they mean well, they cannot transfer likes to you. And also, likes are not real votes on the ground. Even when we met up down there, I was in Dallas and I couldn't believe you were driving. You were like, I just drove. I'm like, what? And you're right, to Amber's earlier point, you didn't really look phased. I was like, you know, is it stressful? Are you going through a lot? He's like, you know,
it is what it is.
I don't have a bead of sweat on my forehead. I, on the other hand, might be, you know, tripping out, but yeah.
But yeah. So to DaSean's point, when we're talking about the party, we're not talking about the people. Like the people are down.
Wonderful.
They are amazing. They showed up to the polls and did what they said they would do. Right. I'm talking about the party structure. And you know, it's been the same in Dallas. I mean, I guess I was in the primary with 2 other Democrats, right? And the party's supposed to stay out of the primary, right? Parties stay out of primaries. That's the requirement, right? I won't say that necessarily happened in any of the elections where I had primary opponents. My first time running, I was a prosecutor at the time, and big ups to Mr. Watkins, first elected Black DA in Texas, created the
we've seen that.
The Conviction Integrity Unit, upstanding man, a lot of good work done under his leadership, allowed yes. Rest in peace, Mr. Watkins. He allowed us to run and keep our jobs, right? And the opponent that I had was an incumbent. The party started a campaign called "We Support Incumbents."
Yes.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you're supposed to stay out of primaries. What do you mean support incumbents?
They do that in New York. In New York, they support somebody, but it's usually anyway.
Oh, yeah, you were supposed to stay out of it in Texas. And then fast forward to my most recent one, man, I couldn't even get a meeting. My PR person scheduled a meeting with the head of the party, and she didn't come.
And this is as the incumbent.
Yes, I'm the incumbent, right? And this is like, we end up meeting with the vice chair, and he's like, oh, let's take a picture. I'm going to post it. You think I ever got posted on the Dallas County Democratic anything? No, right? I learned a long time ago in 2013 that actually I stopped going to party events because there was nothing kind there for me, nothing warm and fuzzy there for me. I would rather go talk to the people. Right.
What do you think?
I would rather go to a restaurant and sit down with you. I walk up on random people all the time, like, hi, how are you? You know, XYZ, let me talk to you. Let me find out who you are, what your interests are, and what you expect from your elected officials, because it has not been a supportive space.
How long are the terms?
4
years. Okay.
So we run every 2 years.
That's cool. But you what every 2 years?
So the terms are 4 years, and so you run every 2 years. So halfway through your term, you're running.
You start
again.
running.
Oh, right. You have to start running again.
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting picture to paint too. For anyone who's, I meet people every day who are like, I want to run for office. I want to do this. I want to do that. And, you know, everyone's first year, again, like DaSean even broke down. He was like, I just got in there. And, you know, people don't realize, you know, there's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts. You know, after a few years, like even when I walk through Harlem right now, I just see like gang lines. I see whose block is whose and where, no matter where I am. It's just how I see the grid that we live on. I don't know if you all see that as you drive through, you're like, this is such and such territory. It's like red gang, blue gang. Anyway, no, I just, Peter, Rich, if y'all got a extra
Yeah,
question.
I was gonna say I just have one last thing because I have to jump in a moment. But in terms of like, do you both have strategies? Do you have thoughts on how we could bring folks more actively into like the judicial process? Like courts are open to the public.
Yes.
These are, but nobody's taking advantage of this in a regular way to understand what's happening in this respect. Do you have a strategy? Is it something that you consider when, you know, campaigning? Is it just something civically, personally that you're interested in? Is trying to get people more actively to be concerned and part, you know, and observing, because observation is such a key part of understanding the systems, is seeing what's happening. So I just kind of, I do have to jump, but I want to say thank you so much to both of you for sharing your time, and leave you with that. Like,
thank you.
How do we get folks paying more attention to this space?
So I thank you. That was a very thoughtful question as well. I created a deal called word of mouth, but you know, that's serving on the bench and then serving off the bench, right? And word of mouth was to educate and demystify the criminal justice system, right? Yeah. And so it's just extra work on your elected official to, you know, go out and make sure that we're creating a space where the people can be heard and where they know you're accessible, because to your point, nobody takes off work to come sit inside the courtroom. Like they just don't do it. Yeah. But that's when virtual court was really cool.
Yes.
Because we were doing streaming on Facebook. You know, and I'll say this, I thought it was great, but people were mad at me. My regional administrative judge told me, can you just stop? I was like, what do you mean stop? Like the Supreme Court told me I have to either stream through YouTube or Facebook, and my YouTube link broke. So I had to do Facebook. I had colleagues texting me, can you just stop on Facebook? Because, you know, we're all on YouTube. And I was like, but nobody can find your YouTube channel. Like, I want people who know me in the community that voted for me. I want you to be able to see what I do in court every day, you know? And that upset them. Transparency will upset people because they don't want people to see the great work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to jump too. Yeah. I just have to tell both of you, as a former educator, as a prosecutor, formerly non-mediator, it is a pleasure to see you both do what you do. And when I walked in those courtrooms, I would be asked, you know, am I a defendant or not? You know, I'm the prosecutor and I'm being asked, am I the defendant, or who am I representing in the back?
Oh, right.
And, you know, I know the few Black judges that I've had the power to be in front of as a Black prosecutor, what a wonderful feeling that was, and all the suspicion that comes around that. Are we colluding because I'm a Black prosecutor and you're a Black judge? And those issues and those anxieties that come with it, you all have handled it wonderfully. And I just want to tell you, you are an inspiration. You are powerful. And I hope that y'all take over the Democratic Party, right? Why don't you take it over? Why don't y'all make it what it should be for people like you? Because I'll follow y'all.
I think on that note, we're going to, I love that, Reg. But what I would say for you, Reg, is stop walking in the court looking like a thug. And I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You know, we gotta find Reg alumni chapter. That's a separate conversation. We gotta talk to his wife. Thank you, Judge Givens, Judge Jones. Thank you, Reg. Thank you, Peter. Let's try to do this again. Definitely. I think there's more to dive into, but thank you both for your service and the work you did.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.